And that really pissed me off. So I picked up some drumsticks and just chucked them at his red guitar. And that was the point where me and him sort of... And he'd gone through the whole of the band, and I was the last one, it seemed, that he fell out with. I was very aware that something bad was happening.
I was very desperate, had an idea in my head, and unfortunately at that age, I didn't really have the emotional or the social skills to deliver what I needed, the diplomatic skills to deliver what I needed to do. But I didn't really give a fuck at the time, I'll be really honest with you. I did feel like I had something there and it would work, and I kind of had to get it across, so I'm full of apologies now. But that's how it was, so basically I wanted it to be, where there was drums, they were going to be extraordinary, and where there weren't going to be drums, it was going to be extraordinary because there weren't drums.
Bernard's gift for music was just off the scale. We all knew it, there was no debate, but he did not like any other musical interference in his vision at that point. And that's why something like Asphalt World became so problematic for him.
Right, let's go.
Because we were kind of fighting a little bit, you'd sometimes come into this kind of ghost of a song. I remember that with Asphalt World, totally. Normally you'd build stuff up from the rhythm section, but I know with Asphalt World, I hadn't played on it, and I came in and there was just this serpent of guitar. As a musician, it was literally like, all right.
It was always quite a contentious song. It somehow sort of like encapsulated the differences in the band. I have a very distinct memory of delivering the vocal to that song after having read an interview that Bernard gave to Vox magazine, where he was quite critical of me as a writer and as a musician.
Brett was livid, but it was also disappointed.
Feeling quite hurt and trying to almost like channel my feelings of anger and frustration into the kind of iciness of the vocal performance.
Ice in her blood and a tub in her hand. Your power is when she's in your blood, and you're wearing her arms, and wearing her legs. We'll all be in her. That's where I go, and that's what I do, and that's how it feels.
That tension was actually becoming quite poisonous, and I think it was difficult for Bernard particularly, because he was not comfortable in that environment. And him and Ed didn't see eye to eye, and they had quite a lot of disagreements.
So what we're going to really do is do all the drums and bass and go back and redo all the guitars.
And so the power shift really was that Bernard was exercising more and more control over every aspect of the band's sound and how the record was made. And, he was still giving me my space to do my job, but I was mindful of the fact that there was 3 other people in the band, and I was trying to get the best possible record for everybody.
But not everything not to go out completely, just like drop right down. But
I think Ed was pretty much the last person on Bernard's blacklist. When he went for Ed in a big way.
And when it went wrong, it happened over a weekend. It happened over a very short period of time.
I'm not sure whether that's to do with the two of them or it would have happened with any producer.
Suddenly we found ourselves in this position where he was making an ultimatum and saying either we get rid of Ed or I'm going.
It's not about him or Ed. It's about issuing an ultimatum. It doesn't work that way.
It was our band. It wasn't your band, it wasn't your band, it wasn't your band, it wasn't my band, it was our band.
No one has absolute power.
I felt as though I couldn't give in to that.
There was a lot of agonising and what-ifs and how do we deal with this and how do we make it right. It wasn't possible to make it right for everybody, and there needed to be a resolution about which probably not everybody was going to be happy.
We got a phone call from our lawyer saying that Bernard's officially said he's left the band.
People loved us. People followed us. We were in the midst of a record that sounded amazing. Now I look at it and think, if you want to leave that kind of situation, something as good as that, you must have been feeling terrible about us and what we were doing. And now I look back on it and think, I should have been thinking of him.
Of course, I would have done anything to have kept Bernard in the band and happy, but the fact was, he wasn't happy.
I was amazed that Bernard didn't leave sooner. It was so volatile from day one. It was unbelievably volatile.
Decisions that are made can't be made lightly, because you're talking about, you know, what is this a good thing to do? Is it a bad thing? You'll never know until it's too late. You roll the dice. But when it doesn't work, where do you go? What do you do? Well, what about the kids? What about the rhythm section?
I can remember thinking it was for the best, and it only being when kind of like music journalists started turning up outside the studio, realizing, oh, this might be a bit of a bigger deal than I think it is.
We're going to go da-dum-bum-bum-bum-bum.
In between trying to get the strings done for the Wild Ones and Still Life, I think we were doing in CTS Studios.
Which issue of press it was separate from Bernard?
We were having this band meeting with Saul and the press office on the phone to try and get some sort of statement out.
All I ever do.
We're not great at talking to each other. So in a situation like that, I think it's quite possible that we're all sitting there thinking, this is so fucked up, what are we going to do? But no one's going to say it, so you just keep on going.
It's the best solution for everybody. And they've gone on to say that the show will go on, that the album is amazing, the band will continue.
Oh, can I write the show will go on in mine?
No, I've done mine.
What have you written? Roll on Act 2?
Nothing like that.
I guess I was sort of hiding from everything, hiding behind this sort of cliched rock star persona, you know, wearing my aviators in the control room, you know. I do remember feeling incredibly sort of, you know, sort of bruised by it. At the heart of it was the loss of a friend, and that was very sad.
He was obviously heartbroken, but he hid it and just was like, right, I'm not going to get upset about this. It's almost like his business head took over.
Because you see, everything comes in there anyway.
I was bluffing it out, but I was absolutely terrified that we were over. I think 99% of the world thought that we were over, including a part of me. How were we going to carry on?
I knew we had a great album. Dogma Style was amazing, but we didn't have a guitarist.
I think it's a great record. I think you can hear the darkness, a bit like the Beatles' White Album.
The reason Dogma Style was so unique was because of the white-hot chemistry.
Sometimes the grit in the oyster makes the pearl, and I think some of that darkness and difficulty gets into Dog Man Style in a good way, for me as a listener, if not for Suede as a band.
There was such breadth to it, and such a wide range of emotions to it.
My favourite Suede record, the one that just has everything, is We Are the Pigs. Police Car on Fire. The menace coming off that record.
We had this amazing record, and I wanted the world to hear this amazing record.
One of the things that's really remarkable about Suede is the fact they managed to keep going.
We just continued with kind of a bit of insane belief in our hearts. And then we put an advert in the paper, like we were 17 again.
You know, I guess I was just praying that we'd find somebody else who could be equally as good as Bernard, and the band would carry on.
Never worried me, because that band was always Brett and Matt to me in my head. So you think, well, I'll bring in another guitarist. I don't know, you can be 17 years old from Poole, that sounds fine.
Does anyone ever have these problems apart from us?
No, we're the only band in the world that has these problems.
Very quickly, when we had a conversation, they had said, we're going to find somebody else, and we're going to find somebody new, and we're going to put an ad in the enemy, and we're going to find somebody, and everyone was just confident this was what was going to happen.